Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be doing a special. I think this is episode 25. We're doing another simulcast on spaces. I just did a video and I published it about the market, the oil market, the S&P 500, and how I think it's all going to play out. This video is going to deal with what transpired with Congress and the different presidents, the Harvard president, the MIT, and I think it was UPenn. Let's begin. This video is from Forbes.
Panel for being here. These are difficult times and difficult subjects, but they need to be addressed because leadership matters, and you are leaders in academia, at your institutions as well, and leadership matters. President Gay, I was taken by some words in your opening statement where you said, cure for anti-Semitism is knowledge. I would go where angels fear to tread and suggest that it might be better going back to the original motto idea for Harvard, which was Veritas, truth, that the cure for anti-Semitism is not simply knowledge, it's truth. Knowledge puffs up. Knowledge sometimes is based upon falsehoods. I think that's what we're facing right now in the climate on campuses, is that we're missing the fact of truth and allowing, under the guise of free speech, knowledge that isn't true to be exhibited in actions as well. So President Gay, in the weeks since October 7th, and again in your testimony, you have said that Harvard's commitment to free speech extends to views that are objectionable or outrageous. Are you aware that Harvard is ranked dead last on the 2024 Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression scorecard of universities on freedom of speech?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. Respectfully, I disagree with that perspective as represented in the report that you cited. I don't think it's an accurate representation of how Harvard treats speech on campus. We are committed to free expression and to making space for a wide range of views and perspectives on our campus.
With all due respect,
this is bedrock.
I would expect that you wouldn't agree with that. I understand that. And I would expect that the University of Penn, the same would be true, that you wouldn't agree that you're second to last on that same scorecard. But President Gay, did you know that 70% of Harvard students say that shouting down a speaker is acceptable?
That is not okay.
I appreciate that. It seems that...
But President Gay, all right, now, I'm an alumnus from Harvard. I did my master's at Harvard University through HES, all right? I spent a lot of time on campus, right? And Faust was the first president for me, and then it went to Bacow, right? So I, graduated from Harvard before President Gay was ushered in, because Bacow just retired. So she's relatively new to Harvard as being president, all right? She's not new to Harvard, but she's new to Harvard as being a president, all right? So she's walking on eggshells. Bacow was Jewish. President Bacow was Jewish, or is Jewish, and, he probably would have handled the issue differently. I personally think that what is happening with the presidents, with MIT, Harvard, and UPenn is another manifestation of affirmative action, and that we're not getting really good leaders. We're getting leaders because they click some boxes, all right, because they're female, or they're a minority of some sort, all right. That doesn't discredit their academic achievements. But the point is that you can have academic achievements and be a poor leader. You could have no academic achievements and be a great leader. Look at George Washington. All right. So there's just, leadership and academic achievements don't necessarily coincide. What are you doing, President Gay, for Harvard to make sure that you do not produce these ultra liberals that are affecting the country? Because what I saw on campus, starting from 2017 all the way through, the very beginning of 2022, all right, from what I saw was a student population that was becoming socialistic, that they were into socialism, they were trying to bring down capitalism, and there were elements of communism that's running rampant in that school, on top of being tied into the 1,000 talent program, on top of getting money from bad actors from the Middle East and from Asia. Harvard has a huge problem with this, and they need to do the right thing. But no, they'll placate to the standard hate, the state standard hate mantra. Poor answer, especially for someone that's the president of Harvard. And what is in the talk now in the club, right? The Harvard clubs. People don't even want to donate to Harvard anymore. So there's going to be a backlash that's going to echo for many, many years for Harvard. Watch. And the thing is that these students that thought that they were going to get into a good school, MIT, UPenn, Harvard, they're going to be blacklisted.
Harvard's commitment to free speech is pretty selective. As you are no doubt aware, prominent alumnus Bill Ackman tweeted you a letter on Sunday, and in that letter, I have that tweet. I guess that's the beauty of social media. You can get those things. In that letter, he highlighted 2 cases of Harvard faculty members who were canceled because of views deemed too controversial for your campus. Tyler J. Vanderweel was deemed guilty for those crimes related to his views on marriage and abortion. And then Carol Hoven, an evolutionary biologist, was forced to resign because she stated that a person's sex is biological and binary. Mr. Ackerman's letter also...
Now, just remember, we had a justice that was confirmed, relatively recent, the most recent justice for the Supreme Court, coming from Harvard Law School, that couldn't give you the definition between a male and a female. What is a female? And she's on the Supreme Court making decisions. My personal experience was I was in the science hall. I don't remember what year it was. It must have been it was either 2018 or probably beginning, maybe that January term for 2019 or late 2018. I don't remember. But I was in the science hall coming out of class, and you had these undergrads that were wearing these T-shirts that were promoting abortion. All right. We just got out, because I was, in a class that was more biology related. It might have even been my neuroscience class. I don't remember. But coming out, and in the science hall, there is a cafeteria near the entrance by the doors. And there's a library. There's a library next to that. And in that foyer area by the door, You had a lined up of all these undergrad students promoting abortion, saying it's all right. And they literally had that on a T-shirt of, of these aborted fetuses. That's how gross they get. They're out of control. Now, not all the students are like that. Many of them are quiet, but there are a lot that are belligerent. It's a major problem, and I'm sure it's happening on many other campuses. That's something that you don't expect to be happening in a fucking science hall at Harvard University.
Quotes from a number of faculty highlighting the culture of fear that pervades Harvard's campus for those with views out of step with campus orthodoxy. And so, President Gay, in what world is a call for violence against Jews protected speech, but a belief that sex is biological and binary isn't?
Thank you for your question. So from the moment that our students arrive on campus, whether it is to begin their Harvard journey as an undergraduate or at one of the professional schools, the message to them is clear, that we are an inclusive community, but one deeply committed to free expression. And that means that we have expectations that that right is exercised mindfully and with empathy towards others. We reinforce that during their time at Harvard by helping them build the skills that allow them to engage in constructive dialogue, even on the most complex and divisive issues. Because what we seek is not simply free expression, but the reasoned dialogue that leads to truth and discovery, and that does the work of moving us all forward. We don't always get it right, and our students don't always get it right.
How is it possible that doing a die-in is constructive? How is it possible on November of 2019 at the Harvard-Yale game, the undergrads from Harvard stormed the field during halftime and stopped the game for 45 minutes? I was there. I saw it with my own fucking eyes. The student body is out of control. And it's because you have presidents that aren't willing to be forceful. Now, at this moment that I'm talking about, with them storming the field, they wanted it was all this anti-fossil agenda. And it was under Pacau in that case. And he allowed it to happen. But the thing is that this ultra-liberal crap that I'm telling you about will always start to go after the Jew and the Christian. Because beliefs, some sort of religious belief system is antithetical to their own agenda. And the Christians need to start waking up. The Jew is the bellwether. Ha ha ha. It's funny. It's so funny to tease the Jew until it starts coming after you. There's a major fucking problem.
And when they transgress, they're held accountable.
Well, don't they? Your professors come under that as well, don't they?
Absolutely.
And so for Professor Vanderweel and Hoeven, that didn't work for them. The free expression of views, at the very least, views, whether fact or truth, I guess we'll leave that to understanding, but nonetheless, they were removed from their positions. And I think that sends a message in this case with Jewish students, that they're of less importance. I yield back.
It's a bigger problem, and it's an ultra-liberal agenda that's out of control. All right, now we're going to go to I want to go to another clip. Let's try this one. This is Forbes also.
You know, a lot of people think that in order to conceal carry, you're going to need a tactical belt and a set of jeans. Well, I'm here to tell you that you don't. In fact, you can carry.
The representative in Michigan, Ms. McLean, is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. I listened to your opening statement, and we all talked so passionately about what was happening on the college campuses as it pertains to anti-Semitism is absolutely unacceptable. And I appreciate that. However, talk is cheap, and we really need action. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is what actual
I guarantee you that if this issue was, going against blacks on campus, that these presidents would change their tune so differently. Just like look at what happened with the Black Lives Matter movement. And these universities were donating money to the cause. And it was a fraud. And they'll do nothing about what's going on now. Bullshit.
Lip service, but action items have happened. So I'll start with you. President Gay, under your leadership, Harvard has done little to condemn Hamas's brutal murder of women and children, promote Israel's right to defend itself, or protect Jewish students from harassment. For example, I'm curious, what action was taken from Harvard when a Jewish student was mobbed on your campus last month? Action, not lip service action, ma'am.
So this specific incident, I've communicated about publicly. So as you may know, that is an incident that is currently under investigation by Ph.D. and the FBI.
Any action.
And when that investigation is complete,
so you can't.
So she'll hide under it. She's doing exactly the same crap that the other FBI agents, when they're called into Congress, what the fuck is going on? Oh, it's under investigation. We can't give you any clarification yet. It's under investigation. It's lip service constantly. There's a major issue, and people need to pay attention. The ultra liberal is fucking us in this country. It's a major problem. So the conservative movement needs to push back. Even if you're in the middle ground, you need to start pushing back.
Action item or not, as of this time? Was any action taken? Any action?
I can't share more about.
Will
bullshit.
Students,
that's not a leader.
Jewish students, just because they are Jewish, be expelled from the university?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your question.
Will the students who are intimidating Jewish students just because they're Jewish be expelled?
It should be.
You're describing conduct that sounds like it would violate our policies against bullying and intimidation and harassment. And if that is the case, it would be addressed through our policies.
Another question. Why did you allow protesters to occupy University Hall for 20?
No one at Harvard is getting expelled because they're anti-Semitic. Trust me. But, mark my words, donations to Harvard are going to go down.
Hours. And not only were these students not punished, but two of your deans provided them with food and promised no disciplinary action would be taken. And that was reported by the Harvard Crimson.
I can assure you that we have very strong disciplinary processes.
Now, I know a little bit about the Harvard Crimson because they went after me when I was covering COVID and warning the damn public about the 1,000 Talent program and their fucking Lieber professor and how they were working with Wuhan. And they tried to discredit me, even though I was 100% right.
That violates our policies.
So did conduct violate your policies?
We have disciplinary processes underway.
So is there an answer?
She's a bullshit leader.
We have disciplinary processes underway.
So was any discipline action? I love the lip service. I do. And you academic, I love that. I'm looking for an action item. Yes, no. Was anybody expelled? Any action item? And if you don't know, that's okay too.
We hold our community to account.
I'll reclaim my
policies.
time. Thank you, President McGill. Under your tenure, swastikas have been drawn outside Residence Hall.
I'm telling you, she is a terrible leader. Terrible leader. I was open-minded. I was a little concerned, at first when she was brought in, and I was going to give her the benefit of the doubt. But she's a complete terrible leader. And there's probably going to be pressure to push her out of the presidency for Harvard.
Where Jewish students live, the Hillel house was broken into. Jewish students urged not to wear symbols of their ethnicity, and those same students harassed when they go to collect Filah for Shabbat. I will be submitting questions for the record on outbreaks of anti-Semitism at UPenn, and I look forward to your response, because obviously 5 minutes is just way too short of an answer. But I would encourage you to give answers. We deserve answers. People deserve answers, not rhetoric, action items. It is clear that the Jewish students on all of your campuses are afraid to be themselves because you have refused to take real action. There's that word, action, against anti-Semitism, right? A lot of rhetoric, no action. I strongly encourage all of you to look at the Holocaust learning experience set up by Morse Life Health System in Florida to teach lessons from the actual Holocaust to students in 5th through 12th.
The bigger issue here isn't just the anti-Semitism, it's the pro-BLM. There's a bigger issue here. They are pro on certain policies and very anti on others. Instead of an amalgamation of free ideas that in a utopian world, would be conversed in like Aristotle in some sort of, toga, in the middle of the yard. But that's not what's happening. And I'm not just, spouting off. I've seen it with my own eyes.
This program has trained hundreds of teachers in 2 short years.
All right, we're going to go to Ackman on David Rubenstein.
Miami is the world's largest cruise port, and currently we're the 10th largest container port in the United States.
But one of the institutions you've been very philanthropic with is your alma mater, Harvard. But recently you've been very public about your criticism of the way Harvard handled the events of October 7th and their aftermath. Could you talk about that now?
The first reaction of a group of 34 Harvard student clubs on the morning after October 7th was to put out a statement saying that Israel was 100% responsible for the acts of Hamas. And my view on that was, that's ridiculous. And that's more than ridiculous, I would say. And, these students need to have some, judgment and perspective. You can come out and say, look, I'm very unhappy about Israel.
Now you got to remember, Ackman probably is my age. Let me double check. I just want to be accurate here, but I bet he's my age. So we're coming, from a Gen X perspective. Bill Ackman. Now he's a hedge fund guy. All right, he went to Harvard. He went to Harvard and received a Bachelor's of Arts and an MBA. All right. And he was born, so he's 57. So he's a little bit older than I am. All right. So he's really, he was 66. So that's, 66. He might be really just beginning Gen X, just beginning. He's right at that edge. But, people that are older, and that have gone, to these universities, their perspective is different than the newer crowd. You got to remember, we're dealing with the newer student body, especially at the college level. All right. And I'll tell you, there's something bad coming to America if these policies take hold, what their belief systems are. It is antithetical to capitalism. It's antithetical to the Constitution and civil liberties, and it's downright communism or high-end socialism. So the point I'm making is that we're seeing people pushing back that are the Gen Xers that are coming from a different perspective. They're coming from a more middle ground perspective. While these ultra liberals they swung so far to the left. When you're promoting BLM, right, and you're not condemning what was going on campus just recently with what's been going on with anti-Semitism, then you're biased.
In the West Bank, or you can say, we can talk about the Gaza Strip, but you can't support terrorists, and particularly terrorists that rape and pillage and murder and burn and take hostages. Well, I got a text from a CEO in my industry. He's like, Bill, the people at Harvard, I'd like to know who the students are behind these clubs, so I'd make sure I don't inadvertently hire them. And so I tweeted out that sort of made that point, and caused a bit of a firestorm, and I got a lot of pushback. Well, why are you picking on the students? And I said, look, you can't hide behind a corporate entity if you're going to support terrorism. That's a major decision. So that was sort of my first initiative, if you will, at Harvard. And then there were protests on campus, and the protests were supportive of terrorism and supportive of things like when you have a group of students shouting "Intifada, Intifada," let's free Palestine from the river to the sea. The meaning of Intifada means to kill Jews. When I raised this issue, Harvard said, well, we have a commitment to free speech, and that's why we have to allow this. Well, there's certain speech that is certainly permissible under the First Amendment, and then there's certain speech that I would say is undesirable on a campus.
Have you said you're not going to donate to Harvard anymore, or have you said I'm not going to hire people from these Harvard students anymore, or people like those people?
No. Well, one, we're not going to hire anyone that supports terrorism at Berkeley Square. I haven't made any statements about, economic support for Harvard. I want Harvard to do the right thing. I don't want to threaten one way or another. That's not my kind of approach. But I do think Harvard needs to do a deep examination of, one, there's been a meaningful rise in anti-Semitic incidents on campus.
So you're going to continue to be involved in this issue and try to push Harvard to do what you think they should be doing?
Absolutely. I wrote a pretty thoughtful letter that was, I think 25 million people saw it on Twitter. And remarkably, I did not get a response, which to me...
Let me just read a section of that letter. Let me just read a section of that letter. And I don't want to take it out of context, but, I don't want to read the whole letter. So I apologize if it seems as though it's taken out of context. I don't mean that if it does happen. But I just want to focus on one part of it. 4 weeks after the barbaric terrorist attacks of October 7th, I've lost confidence that you in the university will do what is required. And I think that goes to the point. Now, he wrote it in a nice little letter to President Gay. All right. So, I say it a little bit more rough because I'm from Detroit. All right. And I'm the New Yorker now, right? So I'm going to say it a little rough. But President Gay doesn't know what the fuck she's doing. And she needs to be pushed out.
And weak approach. Literally no response, no acknowledgement, no, dear Bill, I hear what you're saying, but nothing. So yes, I'm an activist, but my activism today is probably not in the corporate boardroom. It's on campus, and this is not just a Harvard problem. And it's an NYU problem. It's a University of Pennsylvania problem. The more I examine the issue, the more woke, the more left-leaning the institution, the more anti-Semitism, which is a very unfortunate thing.
He's saying what I've been saying. It's about this ultra left movement And it's going to be destructive because some of these people are going to be able to get into politics, get into government positions, get into corporate America, and you're going to start seeing, you know, we have this term, you know, you have this, you know, this woke female boss, right? You know, and it's, you know, and it's all through affirmative action, right? All right. And let's just, and I don't want to sound like I'm, you know, some chauvinist pig. I'm not. But, you know, there are cases in corporate America where you got the bitch boss because of affirmative action. And it's very real. And if people are trying to pretend that it doesn't exist, well, you know what? You're not being honest because it does exist.
The representative in Michigan is McLean.
I want to play another one. Let's take a look at Virginia Fox asked Harvard's president point blank, "Do you believe Israel has the right to exist?" Now she's a older congresswoman, you know, in small stature and kind of looks like my grandmother, but you know, when she was alive. But it's this is kind of funny.
Nice to keep your questions succinct. So the witnesses, before I ask my questions, let me do some housekeeping. Under Committee Rule 9, we'll now question witnesses under the 5-minute rule. I remind members that I'll strictly enforce the 5-minute rule. So members are advised to keep your questions succinct so the witnesses have time to answer. Please don't talk for 4 minutes and then ask the witness a question.
Now, the ones that are on X, you know, I'm playing a video from Forbes Breaking News channel on YouTube. In the background, and for the ones that are watching the video, you can see this, but in the background, you got this woman, you know, with a higher end mask, almost to the point where it's like a respirator. You know, so I'm telling you, there's this woke thing going on in America. There's this stupidity woke thing it's so pervasive. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's a big issue. It's a big issue. It's not just anti-Semitism.
We've heard from many students that they do not feel safe. You've talked about that in your statements. But the anti-Semitism we've seen and on your campuses didn't come out of nowhere. There are cultures at your institutions that foster it because you have faculty and students who hate Jews, hate Israel, and are comfortable apologizing for terror. How did your campuses get this way? What is it about the way that you hire faculty and approve curriculum that's allowing your campuses to be infected by this intellectual and moral rot? President
I'll tell you what, it all started during the Vietnam era with all these pussy professors spouting out a bunch of bullshit.
I ask you to give me a brief answer. I also would invite you to follow up with more in writing, and we will follow up with you. So I will go down the line, President Gay, then President McGill, and President Kornbluth.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox. Again, anti-Semitism has no place at Harvard.
Lip service.
When we recruit faculty, we do so with the understanding that they are joining a community where we honor, celebrate, and nurture open discourse, both on the campus and in the classroom. And to be a successful teacher and educator at Harvard requires the ability to draw out all of the viewpoints and voices in your classroom, irrespective of—
It's not just the classroom interaction, it's also the faculty interaction. And I'm telling you, I have seen it. The ones that are conservative that are on campus, which are few in terms of the faculty, are hiding because of the power that the ultra liberal has in the faculty population. So it's not just the student interaction, but it's also the interaction between faculty members. It's a big, I'll tell you, this thing is a lot bigger than a lot of people realize.
And we devote
And she's
significant resources.
She doesn't have the wherewithal as a leader to be able to solve the problem, because she elevated to that position because of wokeism.
Faculty in that pedagogical skill and prioritizing that in our recruiting and hiring.
Thank you. Ms. McGill.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the question. I'm troubled by what you're reporting about the culture of the institutions that we're leading. Very contrary to the values that I hold as a leader of University of Pennsylvania, as well as the institution, where any form of hate is very contrary to our values. I would venture an answer.
Why did you expel students? Or at least put them on, on suspension? No. But you'll support BLM.
Semitism has a role in the broader society, and that's what we're seeing happening in the society and on our campuses. And I'm committed to combating it in the immediate term and the long term.
Yeah, bullshit.
Thank you. Dr. Kornbluth.
Yes, so MIT is a majority STEM education and research institution, and we are devoted to solving the problems that face society. Our faculty are hired for their brilliance. Now, we allow them to say what they'd like in the classroom in the name of free expression, but we are committed to having them know that that our campus must be a welcoming and inclusive environment. And although they may say what they like in the classroom academically, targeting any individual student, harassing or discriminating is strictly forbidden in our classrooms and on campus.
Thank you. We will be following up with asking for specific plans for disciplining student and faculty who assault or harass students or prevent them from accessing undisrupted classes or campus spaces. We'll be asking for your plan for preventing this rot from perpetuating, how you're going to hire and assess instructors, how will you change how you govern students, and what are the practical steps you will plan to take. I want to ask you one more question. It seems, as I've said, and Ms. McGill, I appreciate the fact that you feel concerned about my feeling about the fundamental culture on the campuses is foundational to this issue, denial of the right of Israel to exist. So I want to ask each one of you, President Gay, do you believe that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish nation?
You got to remember, I think I could be wrong on the stats on this, but my understanding is the Jewish population within the Harvard College, all right, probably is about the same as a percentage in the graduate schools, all right? But it's around, I thought it was around 5%. So they're not going to give a fuck about 5% student body. What they're going to give a fuck about is the blacks and the Latinos.
The state of Israel has the right to exist.
Ms. McGill, same question.
I agree, Chairwoman Fox. The state of Israel has the right to exist.
God, what a softball fucking question.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Israel
yeah.
has the right
Well,
to exist.
yeah. All right. If they have such a right to exist, why aren't you expelling your students that have been so belligerent? We're not talking about freedom of expression and an exchange of different ideas in terms of a two-state solution, a one-state solution. The Occupy perspective that the Palestinians have versus the Israelis and all this. All right, we're not talking about that. We're talking about actually disrupting classes, actually threatening students. the ultra liberals out of control. And that is the problem. It's not, this is only one granular piece of the issue.
For being here and to say we will follow up and to tell you that while we've talked about a larger culture out there, it's the universities who should be examples of what this nation is all about.
I'm telling you, I'll tell you, Jews have always been hated in every society. I don't know why. It's just a deep, it's always below the surface, and it doesn't take much for it to precipitate out, either because of economic hardship or there's some sort of, change in geopolitics or whatever. But mark my words, Christians are not that far away from Jews. Actually, Christians come from a very strong Judaic background. And the hate against Jews is going to be a hate against Christians. It just takes longer. Now let's play. I want to play. Oh, this will probably be good. Is it okay to segregate people based on their color? Which was a question from one of the congressmen.
Show your daughter how much you love her with this beautiful gift. It says, to my daughter.
Thank you. Let me just start off by saying, been raised in the 60s, days of segregation. This is truly deja vu. One thing that I did learn through my growth of the years is that hate is not passed down our genes. It's taught or untaught. What we're seeing here is hate being perpetuated to keep people segregated, keep them from building bridges of trust, never allowing them to find commonality. Teach them that everything that's going wrong in their life is because of somebody else's actions. Then teach them to look at our differences, our color, creed, and culture, and then teach them to judge each other. It's dehumanizing, it robs people of individuality, but the end game, if it is hate, it is very effective. To teach one race, all minorities, that they are oppressed, the DEI would then teach another race, whites and Jews, that they're oppressors. The result is hatred, segregation, the inability for our children to see evil when it's present. One of my Democratic colleagues was asked recently about the use of strategy by Hamas to rape Jewish women and children, girls and women, as Kara. Her response was not to defend these women against these evil men, but that she wanted to discuss hierarchical oppression. That is DEI. It's a failure to protect Jewish communities across our country at your universities. Let me just say this also. October 7th was a very different day in our lifetime. And yet, every single time we talk about anti-Semitism, we some kind of way drift off into every other sense of racism. We're talking about 1,200 lives, babies being burned, beheaded, hostages, and yet we cannot stay focused on anti-Semitism. I just remember a couple of years ago when we were dealing with Black Lives Matter, try to talk about Blue Lives Matter, Jew Lives Matter, Arab Lives Matter, and you could call it racist. It's time to focus on what's happening on your campuses. It might sound flowery, all the ideas of what your values might be, but those values are not being translated to our kids. You're seeing them in the streets every single day. MIT, we heard from a university student here that a DEI official liked on the most posts on their media, a post calling President Biden a liar for saying that Hamas have beheaded babies. She also posted saying that Israel doesn't have the right to exist. It's illegitimate settler colony like the United States. I have a question regarding this idea of segregation, Dr. Gay. Harvard is now have graduations for Black-only graduates. Hispanic only graduates, and gay only graduates. How does that bring us together as opposed to dividing us based on color, creed, and all the other things? And by the way, is it okay for a white group to say we don't want other minorities to be part of our graduation?
Thank you for the question. There are few scenes that are more inspiring than being.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you in a way that's be very quick because I have a little time. Is it okay to segregate people based on their color? Yes or no?
I oppose segregation.
Okay, well I do too, but it's happening on your campus. Okay, Doctor.
Here's the problem: is that they are not going to solve this problem. I mean, I get, because I'm an alumnus, I get these letters, these the emails from the school and all that. They're revamping their student body, Title IX, I think it is. Every year a student has to go through a course that, it's just online. It takes, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, but you get like a little certificate saying that you went through their Title IX thing. So they're revamping that to add some more anti-Semitism kind of stuff. That's a Band-Aid. That's a Band-Aid, because the student body is being corralled into certain thinking because of some of these professors. It's not the only problem. Then you have the component of social media also corralling them into a certain thought process. There's a lot of hate out there. This is why I said that social media is just an infestation. All right. I have seen nothing. And she even has that little smirk. I'll tell you, she is a poor leader. And she hasn't even been on the job for 12 months yet. She's a poor leader.
I'm sorry. We have on your campus something called Chocolate City, where black only dorms, where whites are excluded. Is it okay also for whites to set up a white only dorm where minorities are excluded?
Actually at MIT, our students affiliate voluntarily with whichever dorm they want to. It's not exclusionary, it's actually positive selection by students which dormitory they want to live in.
Okay, so it's okay for blacks to not make whites feel included. Is it okay for whites not to let blacks feel included on your campus? We're talking about segregation, and it's obviously happening on your campuses.
I think it's really important to say that there's a distinction between sending an exclusionary message and looking to other students for common experiences and support.
Okay. Let me just, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time. And what you're saying is very simply, in 1960s, it would have been okay for whites and blacks to segregate themselves because they felt more like the people they're with. I disagree very, very much. But let me just say this. If in case we discover, and this is for everybody here real quick, last few minutes, that there's a direct link from DEI and CRT to the growth of Marxist-centrist groups like BLM, Antifa, and the pro-Hamas on campuses, would you then end the DEI initiatives on your campus? If there's a link between what that is and what the result of hatred, would that be would that be finished on your campus real quickly? We have just yes or no. Dr. Gates, off with you. Yes or no?
Our DEI efforts are about ensuring that all of our
so that's a no. Okay, Doctor, I'm sorry, Ms. McGill. Yes or no? If it's found to be a link between Marxist, BLM, Antifa, and hate groups. Yes or no?
Our DEI office is committed to having everyone thrive.
All right. And Ms. Coleman, real quick, just yes or no, I'm sorry.
I find it hard to understand how equity and inclusion as a concept is a hatred inducer.
Thank you so much.
I'll tell you, this Burgess Owens, congressman, was pretty smart with his questioning. I was actually impressed with that. Not of all of them so far that I've heard, that was the best questioning. But what it does is he teased out the issue that's happening in these schools. It's not just the elite schools. I think it's happening in all the schools, even the state schools, all right, of higher learning. That there is this pervasive hate that is getting worse. And they try to rationalize it, try to rationalize it. Or they try to, use an explanation. Well, we're not segregated, like the MIT, I think it was the MIT professor. We're not, our president, we're not, as an institution, forcing segregation top down. It's just the student body that's just naturally doing it. Well, all right, maybe that's true. All right. Now go to the next level question. Why are the students doing that? Because there's this underlying hate that is starting to boil up, and it's starting to be fed through social media. So to solve that problem, you don't do opt-in. You do random mix. All right, let's take a look at what CNBC News said about this. But so far, Burgess Owens was the best in the question.
Back now with the presidents of 3 elite universities facing questions about the rising hate on campus. As Stephanie Gosk reports, many lawmakers accuse them of not doing enough to stop it.
On Capitol Hill, the presidents of 3 top schools, MIT, UPenn, and Harvard, grilled over a spike in anti-Semitism on their campuses.
Your university is a hotbed of it.
At the center of the hearing, tension over how to protect both student safety and free speech, while combating anti-Semitism and Islamophobia.
Disagreements about the conflict in the Middle East should never escalate to threats of violence.
Harvard's president was asked about pro-Palestinian demonstrators calling for intifada on her campus.
Can you not say here that it is against the code of conduct at Harvard? We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies.
In recent weeks, a number of Jewish students have told NBC News they worry for their safety.
Why today a Jewish student is afraid to walk to the library at night.
Congressman, let me start by saying I'm devastated to hear that, and the safety and security of our campus and our students in particular is my top concern.
She's so devastated that when they went to break for lunch, she had a tuna sandwich, and she was calling up a donor to make sure that they were going to donate at year end so they meet their quota. She's so devastated. I'll tell you, these people are not real leaders.
In response to hate rhetoric on campus, each walked through new plans to combat anti-Semitism.
Staff here at UPenn say they've received anti-Semitic emails and hateful slogans were projected on buildings. Now there's additional security at religious centers and a new anti-Semitism task force.
Editors of UPenn's student newspaper spoke with us today on campus.
That's not solving it. Adding security is not going to solve the problem. It's getting to the root cause of why these woke individuals are the way they are. And it's social media. It's the professors that are ultra woke. This country is becoming less productive and is rotting from within because of these students. They're out of control.
Have respectful discourse.
People do feel on both sides kind of feel like the space for open discussion and discourse has been lost.
The presidents testifying on Capitol Hill told Congress today they're fighting hard to get it back. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Philadelphia.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Yeah, follow us on social media so we can get advertising dollars. All right, let's I want to take a look at some other This one's from PBS. Now, PBS is pretty liberal. I mean, and you know, it's become even more anti-Trump.
We're going to shift our focus.
Let's see what they have to say.
Now to the heated debate on many college campuses over the Israel-Hamas war and concerns over incidents of violence, threats, and hate speech, which made their way to Capitol Hill today. Protests that erupted after the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel have roiled college campuses across the country, with college administrators facing backlash over their responses to alleged incidents of anti-Semitism. That was the focus of the congressional hearing today, as the presidents of Harvard University, the University of Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology faced questions from the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. Committee Chairwoman Virginia Fox opened the hearing, accusing the schools of fostering a culture of anti-Semitism.
Institutional anti-Semitism and hate are among the poison fruits of your institution's cultures.
Harvard President Claudine Gay, who assumed the role this summer, acknowledged her own struggles at such a tense moment.
I know many in our Harvard Jewish community are hurting and experiencing grief, fear, and trauma. I have heard from faculty, students, staff, and alumni of incidents of intimidation and harassment. At the same time, I know members of Harvard's Muslim and Arab communities are also hurting. During these difficult days, I have felt the bonds of our community strain. In response, I've sought to confront hate while preserving free expression.
Like I said, the mountains that we thought were stable are going to melt as we go through the tumultuous times that we're in. And that if you are on the side of the ultra-liberal, you are going to be that mountain that melts. It's that simple. And that includes Harvard.
Difficult work. And I know that I have not always gotten it right.
Sally Kornbluth is the president of MIT.
I have been president of MIT since January of this year. As an American, as a Jew, and as a human being, I abhor anti-Semitism, and my administration is combating it actively.
All of the college leaders who were testifying said bigotry against Jews, Muslims, Arab Americans, or anyone else was unacceptable and described their efforts to protect students and foster civil dialogue at their schools. But since the outbreak of the war, it's been easier said than done. At Harvard last month, a Jewish student was surrounded by pro-Palestinian protesters yelling shame.
Was any discipline action? I love the lip service. I do. And you academic, I love that. I'm looking for an action item. Yes, no. Was anybody expelled? Any action item. And if you don't know, that's okay too.
We hold our community to account.
I'll reclaim my
policies.
Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York followed up.
Well, let me ask you this. Will admissions offers be rescinded or any disciplinary action be taken against students or applicants who say, from the river to the sea or Intifada, advocating for the murder of Jews?
As I've said, that type of hateful, reckless, offensive speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And today that no action will be taken. What action will be taken?
When speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies, including policies against bullying, harassment, or intimidation, we take action, and we have robust disciplinary processes that allow us to hold individuals accountable.
The lawmakers were universal in their condemnation of anti-Semitism, but Democrats accused Republicans of using today's hearing for other purposes.
I also want to note that the main point of this hearing should be to identify bipartisan solutions to combat anti-Semitism, not an excuse to attack higher education, liberal arts education, or important diversity, equity, and inclusion work that's happening at colleges and universities across the country.
Ahead of the hearing, Republicans organized a press conference with Jewish students sharing how anti-Semitism has affected them.
For my part, I was forced to leave my study group for my doctoral exams halfway through the semester because my group members told me that the people at the Nova Music Festival deserved to die because they were partying on stolen land.
Penn's president, Elizabeth McGill, repeatedly touted the university's plan to combat anti-Semitism.
We are in the midst of making certain that all anti-bigotry efforts ensure education about anti-Semitism. Some parts of our program do, and some parts of our program need to be enhanced. So we're working on that right now.
In light of multiple events at various campuses, the Department of Education recently launched an investigation into 7 schools. The inquiry is focused on complaints of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and schools could face a loss of funding if they don't comply.
These schools only understand one fucking thing, and that is money. And if you stop the funding, you know, these schools are private that we're talking about here. So they're not, you know, so they're getting funding for like projects, you know, research and that kind of thing, right? And they understand about donors. That's the only thing. That's the only thing they care about. And if there's enough donors out there that hate enough Jews, then they'll gravitate to the donor's perspective or the funder's perspective. And there's the problem. And the Christians out there need to start to wake up, because it's happening to the Jews and it's going to come to you, because these ultra liberals are antithetical to your religion. It's you know, it's sad. It's really sad to, you know, to see this. You know, America could be so much better place. You know, my father, you know, he served in the, you know, in the Army, and my brother and my uncles, you know, served in the Navy, and, you know, we had my, you know, second uncles that served in World War II, and my grandfather served in World War II. And, you know, there are an awful lot of people that have served our country in the United States, you know, including my family members. And America can be so much better. But we need to look and see that there's a storm on the horizon with these kids, these ultra liberal kids, and they need discipline. And they need, you know, not only just discipline, but they need a certain level of spirituality. I think that there's a lost aspect of spirituality that is leading these children down these roads. You know? But, you know, yeah, just sad. It's really sad. You know, I try to be optimistic about America, you know, but I just see that it's falling apart because of affirmative action and these woke policies. And, you know, it's not about merit. It's all about, you know, what kind of skin color you are and all this stuff. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong. You know? All right. There was a Bloomberg. There was a Bloomberg interview that was done one day ago.
Port Miami is the world's largest cruise
this
port.
Is by Mark. I may butcher his last name. Mark Doff, former University of California president. All right, he's on Bloomberg television. So let's see what he has to say about this.
Largest container port in the United States. By 2030, we expect the majority of the port.
When you take a step back and you're looking at how universities are dealing with this rise of anti-Semitism on their campuses right now, and the absolute criticism they are facing from some of their top donors, an individual like Mark Rowan of Apollo Capital, as a former president, who is getting it right, do you think?
Well, I would say that there's plenty of fault to go around. There are very few institutions getting it right, in my judgment. You know, I taught constitutional law. There is no exception for hate speech. and hate speech as a general matter is protected. But there are things like shouting down speakers, there's harassment, there are all sorts of issues that need to be regulated. And I think universities need to have clear rules that need to be stated in advance. People need to be warned. And then, if necessary, coordination with people who are concerned with safety and student affairs people to enforce the rules of the campus. And in many places, that's simply not happening. So I think the campuses are quite vulnerable. They need strong rules. They need to enforce them. They need to understand it. They need to make sure the people understand it and the students understand it.
We had some pretty difficult exchanges today in this hearing, Mark. I'd like to bring you and our viewers in the room for a moment. A great example of this exchange between Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, a Republican, and Harvard President Claudine Gay. Let's listen and have you respond.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you not say here that it is against the code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment.
Does that speech not cross that barrier?
Stefanik had a similar exchange with UPenn President Liz McGill that a lot of folks are sharing on social media. These tortured conversations, Mark, are universities seeking nuance when there is not any?
I don't know if it's nuance. I mean, I agree with President Gay that the most horrible racist speech, homophobic speech, misogynistic speech is constitutionally protected. So that's proposition one. But there is a tension between equal protection, non-discrimination under the 14th Amendment, and free speech under the First. And Title VI is the response to that. So it may be that you can't silence the speakers unless they do something else, like harass students or otherwise try to intimidate people. But nonetheless, you can file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, and the university is the defendant. You're not silencing the speakers. You're not suing the speakers. But you're saying to the university, you have a hostile environment for Jewish students, for Israeli students, for people who identify with the Jewish people, and you need to take steps to do something about that. And too often the
institutions, just imagine that you are at a university and you happen to be Black, all right? And there are a bunch of white students that are on the steps of the library as you're walking to class, and they literally are saying the death to Blacks. That's wrong. But what's happening is the universities are allowing this to take hold. All right. Now let's change it. Let's say it's a bunch of Black students that are on the steps saying death to white students, and a white student is going to class, passing the library. The students, or the Black students that are yelling all this rhetoric, is being protected by the university. All right, what happened at Harvard? You had multiple times, you had students on the steps of different buildings, especially the main library, the main undergrad library, Weiner. They are shouting death to Israel, death to the occupiers, right? And that's being protected by the university. All three cases are wrong, all three. And the university needs to hold accountable these students. And the best way to do it is as if it's their first situation with these students, you give them a warning. If they do it again, you suspend them. Maybe a few days or a few weeks within the semester. Do it a third time, they're suspended from the university. They're expelled from the university, period. Something on that order, where it's a It's a stepwise function. All right. But what's happening is that there is this hate because you have a lot of professors that are pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, or anti-capitalism and very pro-socialism. I saw this even with Trump. All right, because during that period of time that I was at Harvard, that was during the Trump years. All right. And going in, it was, I straddled it, there was the Trump years and then, a little bit after the Trump years, but I saw on campuses how the student body was so anti-Trump, how the professors were so anti-Trump. And it wasn't just the person, it was anti-policies, like, lower taxation. They were against lower taxation. They were pro-taxation. They were pro-regulation, more regulations, not less regulations. See, this crowd that we're dealing with it's more than just getting on the steps and yet saying death to someone. They're saying getting on the steps and saying death to America, but they're saying it silently or in code. And that's the problem.
Ignored things like anti-Semitism education. They've ignored things like training programs for student affairs staff. Those systemic things need to take place. So my view is the speech, if you were to require silencing the speakers, that may be problematic. Now, there's one footnote to all this. Many cases, Columbia, Penn, MIT today, we're talking about private universities. The truth is they have more latitude than a public university like the University of California and like the University of Texas. So they can have stricter measures, in my view. They're not subject to the First Amendment. They're not a part of the government that is governed by First Amendment principles. So they have wider latitude, and I think you've seen in places like George Washington, more recently at Columbia. The other thing I think that is driving all this, the campuses are divided as never before. When you're against homophobia, you get almost total agreement on university campuses. When Black Lives Matter and there were police-involved killings, you have almost total agreement. When you're talking about Palestine and Israel, you do not have that. You have a very, very divisive issue. I was there at Harvard during the Vietnam War. I never met a student or faculty member who was in favor of the war. But obviously, if you look at the clips from Columbia and other campuses, Harvard, those communities are very deeply divided. And that, I think, is relatively new and relatively dangerous for campus environments.
Well, you're talking about actions campuses can take that you think they need to take immediately. So are we dealing with an issue of these cultures around campuses? Because Mark Rowan earlier on Surveillance today said it's not a question of free speech. It's that these campuses have favored speech and disavowed speech. Is there just a culture that has taken over at these universities? Is that the problem?
I think that's part of the problem. I mean, it's not acceptable to issue statements that Black people don't belong on the campus, or that women don't belong in higher education, they belong in the home. To state that as a position, and every day, if you're on these emails that I'm on, you're getting communications that say that we need to protect these communities. In many of these universities, and sometimes it's oversight, it's not malice, but Jews were not included. They look like they're doing well. They're represented at many of the major universities and in relatively large numbers. They're not always economically poor. In fact, they're probably above average income. It just was never on the radar screen, and that's a lesson they've missed. The DEI offices, the diversity, equity, inclusion offices in America need to focus on anti-Semitism and the history of the Jewish people every bit as much as they focus on these other groups. There's also this narrative which is dominant among many young people, maybe the majority, I don't know, that the problem in the world is oppression, colonialism, and the like. And that narrative includes Israel. Without any knowledge of the history of Israel or the history of the Jewish people, they've never heard of the Balfour Declaration. They have no idea of, who was expelled from Spain in the 15th century and all the rest of that. So I think there's a tremendous ignorance problem accompanied by some people who view their jobs in a way that inevitably makes Jewish people and the state of Israel the enemy of what they want to accomplish. There are a few bad apples, but I'm a child of the Enlightenment. I believe that we can bring light to these issues and persuade a lot of people to expand the circle of inclusion of groups that you need to watch out for.
Okay, so that was
or Miami.
I thought that interview with Mark was middle of the road, and I would agree with most of what he was saying. Inclusion of people in these universities is important, but I don't believe in this concept of affirmative action. But I also don't think it's 100% just, SAT scores either. It needs to be the whole mosaic of the student. The problem is when there's only 2,000 seats and there's 50,000 applicants, it's really hard to filter through all that. So it's so that's a problem too. But it's not just inclusion of nationality, ethnicities, or different socioeconomic backgrounds, but it's also that these universities need to start moving away from this ultra liberalism that is weakening the country. These universities were established to make the country a better place, more productive, more educated, more civilized, but they're generating people that are quite the opposite. There's the problem. It's about this wokeism that it's these professors coming right out of the Vietnam era. They were students during the Vietnam era, and they had this very very anti-American kind of thing, hippie thing that was going on at that time. And now they're professors. Now they're starting to bleed out of the system because they're retiring, but their protege are leaders within these institutions, and those proteges are ultra liberal. And I'll tell you, most of the student body, most of the faculty body at Harvard is ultra liberal. So, it's very few people are conservative. And once in a while, you'll see someone that used to be an ultra liberal that actually moved towards conservatism because they saw the fallacy in the argument. All right. I know a professor that, I won't say his name, but I know a professor that was kind of a liberal type and then moved towards conservatism within Harvard. And another thing is that there's, these professors, they're worried that that their other colleagues will talk bad, stab them in the back if they don't follow suit to their belief systems. So whoever is, the king dog, the big dog, for that department, if they happen to be an ultra liberal, 9 times out of 10, the smaller dogs will, follow the bigger dog because they're afraid that the big dog is, going to bark, and hurt their career. That's another big problem dynamic that's going on. So it's not just the student body. And unfortunately, I don't think that we have the presidents of these higher universities looking at that. It's a problem. It's a very big problem. So let's see. Let me see if I can get some more video clips on this. I don't want to play the 5-hour hearing. I think that's a little ridiculous. But going to see if I can find some other clips that are important to grab hold here. All right, let's do Fox News, the 5, commentating on it's titled "Congress Cracking Down on Campus Anti-Semitism." Let's see what they said yesterday.
Elon Musk has done it again. Just in the last 23 years, he's made electric cars really happen. He founded PayPal. He launched a rock.
Congress getting tough on the rise in anti-Semitism on our nation's campuses.
Now,
Liberal universities becoming...
On October 14th, right in front of the library for Harvard, you know, that famous library, right? There are students on the steps, and it says, "Stop the genocide in Gaza." They had these banners. They were written on cloth. "Stop the genocide in Gaza." Apartheid. Harvard out, and then I can't read the rest of it because it's blocked by someone's head. Divest. So it's this divest agenda that I saw when I was there, and you know, at those football games. And then there's something about Harvard supporting Israel. It's so small I can't read it. So this is the kind of thing that you're seeing. And then they had the Palestinian flag taped to the pillars of the library. You know, where were the police? I mean, if you do anything out of the ordinary, because they're police that are, they're not only do you have the Cambridge police, you have actually Harvard. There's a Harvard campus police. All right. So there's 2 police organizations that are monitoring that place. You do anything out of the ordinary in the yard, and you're going to have someone coming up to you really fast. All right. So why did the university allow them to actually tape up these flags of the Palestinians on the pillars on October 14th? Why didn't the police say, you know what, you can protest, you can have your banners, you know, walking around or even standing on the steps, but you can't deface the buildings. Either permanently or temporarily. In this regard, it was temporary defacement. They allowed it to happen. This is the point that people are making. It's just that the university is complicit. I guarantee you, if a white dude, you know, a white group out there, you know, said, you know, power to the whites, you know, end the black race or whatever, and they were doing that on the steps, the police would be there in 30 seconds. There's a complicitness that's happening here. And, you know, let's be honest. The school gets a lot of money from the Middle East. That's a fact. The school also gets a lot of money from China.
Pools of pro-Hamas hatred. And today, the presidents of 3 major universities, Harvard, UPenn, and MIT, 3 schools I never applied to, had to explain to lawmakers why they haven't reined in radical anti-Israeli students who've made life a living nightmare for Jewish students. 73% of whom say that they've experienced or seen anti-Semitism on campus.
Our university, revered for its pursuit of knowledge, has devolved into an arena where Jewish students tiptoe through their days, uncertain and unsafe.
Unmistakable anti-Semitism that I've experienced on campus is reminiscent of the Jew hatred I've heard about from my grandparents, Holocaust survivors.
This is not just harassment. This is our lives on the line.
The most heated moment, New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik pressing Harvard's president about the calls for genocide against Jews, which took place on her campus.
You understand that the use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance. Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you not say
No. Okay. Now we've heard this clip, but let me interject a little bit because another thought came into my mind. You have presidents like President Gay, all right, who is a Barno, right? Meaning, you know, doesn't have much experience as the president of Harvard. She's coming from a background that is, you know, anti-colonialism, this, you know, the man was holding us back type. And so now she is part of an institution where the code of conduct may be that these students shouldn't have been doing it, and the university probably should have held them accountable, at least through some sort of, you know, warning or potential expulsion. But deep down inside, she is a president that feeds on what Cornel West has been saying, Professor Cornel West has been saying about the deconstructionism. And we're seeing it play in real time. That's another aspect to it. You may have codes of conduct that are in manuals for students and for professors, but is the university actually holding those professors and those students accountable when they should be? Especially when you have a president that is a deconstructionist. There's a problem there. There's a problem there. She's a weak president. I was trying to give her a benefit of the doubt, but I had a feeling that there was going to be a problem with her when the cow stepped down.
At Harvard,
we embrace a commitment to free expression.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you we have robust.
What actions have been taken? I'm not asking.
Actions underway.
How did you think the president of Harvard came across at the hearing today, Dana?
Like she had been overly prepared by lawyers.
Yep.
And is concerned about backlash on her campus if she were to just simply answer the question about the genocide of Jews, if that is bullying and harassment. I think the only answer to that is yes. Yes. And as Larry Summers said, there's been a double standard in the way these university leaders respond to racism, right? So other forms of prejudice, we know how that's gone. We know even, for example, the president and the vice president, any hint of racism, they'll be out there on camera interviews. They'll be out there doing a press conference. All this White House is done. I mean, I'm not saying that they're for
on October 19th in the yard of Harvard, all right, there was a die-in where the students are, you know, laying that, you know, these students, you know, someone should have just took a truck and just ran over them. But, you know, they're doing a die-in, all right, in the yard, all right? On October 19th, because Israel was fighting back. You know what? Real men actually fight back when someone is attacking your family or your society. But no, we got a bunch of woke fucks that think, oh, Israel fighting back's a bad thing. Oh, bad colonialist. And during that time, October 19th was when we already knew the atrocities that took place from that October 7th invasion. These kids are clueless on what the hell is really going on.
Of course not. But is it too much to ask for the president of the United States to do an on-camera statement about this? He's doing a lot of fundraisers this week, and great, go for it. I know you want to run for re-election and have enough resources to do that. But there are those students today. We were the only network that took those students live, their press conference today, and I'm so glad we did. Very impressive young people. And their pain is real. They're saying, like, we are actually concerned about our safety, and they were representing their other students. The other thing is they can't get their education. The classes are interrupted. They have to walk through all these protests in order to get from one part of the school to the other. We had this other gal on today, Noah Faye from Columbia
and that's so
University.
true. People don't realize that, you know, when you're going into these classes and, you know, and you're going through a crowd that is yelling at you, you don't know if that's going to turn violent or not. Where are the police? Where are the university authorities making sure that this is not going to get out of hand? You know, it's a problem. And it's not just, and I'm not saying this because it's only, you know, targeted to Jews. It would be wrong if it was targeted to blacks. It would be wrong if it was targeted to Muslims. It would be wrong if it was targeted to Indians, or if targeted to the Chinese, or to the Taiwanese. But this anti-Semitism has been just under the surface, right, of these universities and within American society, and obviously around the world with what's going on. And it's now boiled up. It's got out of solution now. You know, it's precipitated out of the solution. So, you know, and the real hearts of people are being shown.
Brave young woman. She's the RA, the resident assistant manager for her dorm. She has vandalism on her door, on her board, on it. They are dealing with it so much, and it would not hurt the campus presidents or even our president to say something to them. They're asking for it.
The first time I felt bad for an RA. Jessica?
I thought the students were fantastic. I can't imagine being able to express myself so clearly and about a subject so difficult at that age. And I struggle, I'm turning 40 with issues that are so personal to me now. So kudos to them and for standing up for themselves. I'm noticing amongst my friends, fellow Jews who went to a lot of these Ivy League schools, my text messages are full of a lot of remorse. And what are we going to do, right? By the time that our kids are getting ready to go to school, hopefully we will not have forgotten this as well, that this is how the administration responded to these kinds of things. I am surprised that there hasn't even been, and I know it's the most base level, but a bit of a reversal when they're seeing the dollars pour out the door. Because,
like I said, the dark cloud that came over the whole world is going to show on how crazy the ultra-liberal is, and how it's eroding the family unit, eroding the productivity of the country, eroding the institution, the strong institutions that society has. To solve this problem, you have to root out these types of people. Now, you don't root them out through death and destruction. You root them out through education and through consequences. In terms of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, that's a different case. You have to kill Esau.
People are going to continue to do this, and more people are going to say, you're not getting my donation. Dana had one of the biggest donors to UPenn this morning on America's Newsroom, who I thought was really interesting. And the point that he highlighted that I think is important to call out again is that this is not a new thing, that foreign dollars have been coming into American universities for a very long time. And it's not just to put up buildings, but it's to change the culture and the way that people think about Israel and Jews writ large around the world. And I want to tell everyone as well to take a look at Bill Ackman, who founded Pershing Capital, billionaire investor. He published his second letter that he sent to Dr. Gay, the president of Harvard. She did not respond to the first one, noting in it that Harvard actually ranks in the bottom 25% in terms of the free speech rankings. And he spoke to a bunch of faculty members who didn't use their names because they want to keep their jobs, which makes sense, but some quotes. Years ago, Harvard stopped being a place where all perspectives were welcome. And then he asked about why this was different than other Middle East conflicts, because we know it's going on constantly. And one of the professors said, Israel is the rare case where we have a hot conflict between people that are deemed white versus people of color. And I have been resistant to buy into the argument that this is about race, and that it is impossible to people to see white people as victims. But as more of this footage comes out of the rapes, as Bright says, sexual atrocities that were committed by Hamas, I don't know how people can look themselves in the mirror.
Now, we did have bad weather. I believe it was bad weather when President Gay had her speech. All right. And it was going to be, I was given the opportunity to have tickets to actually see it in person in Cambridge. But they were also live feeding it into the clubs around the world, especially the New York club. There was only one person. I didn't show up. There was only, I talked to some of the people that run Harvard Club, all right? The desk. And they said only one person showed up for the live feed for President Gay's speech. I'm telling you, now that was before this stuff that was happening. But, in terms of the Israeli-Hamas conflict, there's going to be a growing anger within the alumni body of President Gay. And there's going to be a call over time for her to resign. I don't think she's going to resign tomorrow, but I would not be surprised that within 36 months that she resigns. But we'll see. But I suspect that she will, because there's going to be a lot of pressure by the alumni that's Jewish and not Jewish, that she is a failed leader.
Not call this explicitly what it is when you see the gang rapes, the child rapes, the death and destruction reaped by Hamas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how big of
and here's the reality. Here's the reality of the situation. Part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason why not all the hostages were released was because they're actually in poor care because of the rapes and the beatings. And they can't release them to the Red Cross or the Red Crescent to ship them back to Israel with all the bruises. And how many of the women have been knocked up? I'm telling you, Esau's a fucking animal. And these students are complicit. They're promoting that crap.
Racial component to this conflict.
I think what Jessica's saying is kind of a realization that you are no longer considered a marginalized group. You're considered part of the white oppressor. And when that happens, everything is permissible.
Exactly.
Even laughing
I'll
or
tell you,
mocking a section.
He is making and he probably made a better point than I was making. It's similar. This is beyond just the anti-Semitism. In this woke thing, it's like this anti-colonialism, anti-white, anti-guy, male. There's a larger thing going on here. Ultra-liberalism in the United States and probably worldwide is cancerous.
Atrocity. There is a pro-Palestinian side that makes a sound argument. Being critical of Israel doesn't make you anti-Semitic. But that's not the argument anyone's making on the street or on campus. We could be critical of Israel the same way we can be critical of France or Germany. That isn't what's happening here. It's the refusal to accept the sexual atrocity, despite mountains of evidence. And that any country that falls victim to that has a right to respond. If you're talking to a protester, I always try to figure out, how do you talk to them? Take Israel and Palestine out of this. You walk into a room and there's a gang of young men raping and then murdering a helpless female. Do you suddenly add historical context to that? And over time, do you then bring in nuance and debate over the troubled relationships maybe her parents or grandparents had with those guys' parents? It's like, no, you don't. You punish those people. You have to keep throwing this in their face. This is a sexual.
This is why I said that as time goes on, the liberal mindset is going to eat itself. Data is going to come out. Proof is going to come out of Israel. On top of the behavior of the ultra liberal in the United States, it's that they're going to eat their tail, and it's happening in real time. Dr. Paul Cottrell is not wrong. Dr. Paul Cottrell, has a mug that says that I'm never wrong. All right. How many YouTubers have a mug that's like mine? Nobody.
There's no historical context for it. As for the college president, she's so gay.
Dr. Gay?
Yes.
Dr. Gay, Harvard president. Judge Janine, take us home.
What it reminds me of is, if you prosecute, for murder or sexual violence, never ever does a defense attorney come in and say, well, there was always bad blood there. There is justification in the penal law for this. I mean, this is a whole new upside down way of thinking that is bizarre and is not consistent with what a civilized society does and acts. I have a couple of thoughts. Number one, it's very interesting. We've heard for years that speech is violence, and whenever a conservative speaks, it's violence. We've got to shut them down. We can't allow them to speak. And now all of a sudden, speech that promotes violence is protected speech. So I came out after reading the segment, the paperwork, and I said, what was the point of this hearing? Was it a hearing where everybody just comes out and says, you're bad and we're good, we don't want to tolerate it? Unless Congress comes up with legislation or does something that punishes this kind of behavior, there was no point to all of this other than a dog and pony show that we see every day in Congress. Now, rest assured that even Harvard, the University of Pennsylvania, and these
people come to my channel to get like a little background information. All right. I have met her, Judge Jeannie, 5 separate times. All right. She was the MC for a lot of the events that we were doing for Catholic Charities for raising funds, especially for the gala. All right. And then the Christmas holiday season and all this. We'd have a cardinal, Cardinal Dolan would come in and, talk to the donors and, have a big dinner or lunch or breakfast, depending on what the event was. And a lot of times she emceed for the events. So, I've met her personally. She's really short and spunky and, interesting. There was a close relationship between Fox and Catholic Charities. There was a close relationship with Fox and actually Bill O'Reilly. So I know some backstory stuff that the people that you listen to aren't privy to. All right, because they just have a boring life. And I've had an extremely interesting life. The point I'm making here is that people need to start getting a little bit more. You don't have to go crazy about it, but people need spirituality in their life. We have, lost a lot of Americans through the last crisis. And, and my mother was one of them, and there people to ground yourself, you need some spirituality. And I think that this society, especially the younger crowd, has lost that foundation, that spirituality foundation. You don't have to get crazy. You don't have to be Orthodox or, Bible thumper or whatever. But where we're at right now, there's not enough religion. And there's not enough understanding and appreciation for the family unit. And so the society starts to crumble. You start breaking apart the family unit, it starts to become a problem. So people need to, get a little bit more grounded in spirituality. And, everyone's different with that, how they approach it. But, it was going back to the events at Catholic Charities when I was managing the portfolio, doing the corporate finance stuff back in the day. She's an interesting character. What you're seeing, on this show is basically her personality. She's one of those real people. Some people that go on shows like this, they're different in real life. But there's a lot of spunkiness in her.
Schools get federal grants, they get federal contracts, they get tax breaks. Why should the American people be subsidizing any of these schools if there are Jewish students, girls and boys, young men, young women, who are afraid to go to class, afraid because they might be either raped or assaulted because of who they are? That is a hate crime. And forget about these universities saying, we're going to cut back the amount you need to give in order to be an important donor. No, you take away the federal benefits and you shut them down.
Okay. Up next, a bad sign for Democrats. Kamala.
Yeah, I kind of agree with her. Let's jump into this one. This one's CNN News 18.
Well, through the congressional hearing and that video that's gone viral, the three top universities continue to face severe backlash in the USA and across the world. At several forums, they're being called out for defending increasing cases of campus anti-Semitism. Now, the University of Penn President Liz McGill and Harvard University President Claudine Gay have taken a U-turn. Both appear to be walking back from some of their controversial comments made during the congressional hearing. While University of Pennsylvania President Liz McGill has said that she was focused on university's long-standing policies aligned with the U.S. Constitution, which say that speech alone is not punishable. Harvard University President Claudine Gay, clarifying her testimony, said that there are some who have confused the right to freedom of expression or free expression with the idea that Harvard will condone calls for violence against Jewish students. Does it end here, ladies and gentlemen, or are these now becoming hotbeds for a certain level of bigotry?
I guarantee you, when I talk to an alumnus from Harvard, I am going to constantly remind them that I feel that President Gay is a poor leader and that she needs to be forced out. And I talk to a lot of people at the Harvard Club. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I'm willing to bet in 36 months that she's going to get a lot of pressure to resign. She's a poor leader.
Because there has been an intellectual infiltration of neo-left corrupted by pan-Islam. Now, this is a heady concoction which is being spoken about by authors and thinkers like Rajiv Malhotra and Dr. Vijaya Vishwanathan in Snakes in the Ganga. But tonight, we have a very, very erudite august panel who can elaborate and speak more about what perhaps those from Bharat are also facing as a result of what's happening there. Is it driven only by this entire anti-Semitic values, or does that extend and have its own entire interpretations based on where the origins of that particular person or the ancestry is? So is there a particular agenda against Bharat too that's driven just like there is an agenda against Jews and Israel or Israelis? Anand Raghunathan stays on with us. Pandit Satish Sharma, author, with us. And also, he's been a member of the British Board of Dharmic Scholars. Makrand Paranjpe, Professor JNU with us, and Sarah Al-Gates, Hindu human rights activist, also with us. Namaste. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us. Good to have you all. Sarahji, I know it's way past midnight. It's nearly about 2 a.m. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you're joining us, but you stayed up for us. So let me start with you. Is this a pattern of anti-Semitism that's only prevalent in top academia in the US? Or do you believe that this is spreading elsewhere too? And does it restrict itself only to Jews?
Well, we've seen throughout the past few years with the Dismantling Global Hindutva Conference that many of the same activists or scholar activists, as they call themselves, who were then accusing Hindus of being like the white supremacist Zionists and such, during that period, they're now active and...
Breaking news, the video I did with Peter Duke got pulled down from YouTube just now. I'll tell you. And all he was doing was talking about, you know, a cabal, you know, and all he was doing was writing a book. I cannot believe they pulled his video down. Unbelievable. He wrote a book called The Stealth Power and the Illusion of Democracy. You know, on my small channel, I just premiered it and it was taken down. It was amazing. I'll tell you, the censorship. And he didn't say anything that was wrong. I mean, we were pretty, you know, generic, you know? And, you know, he viewed it in a very scholarly way. It's sad. It's so sad. And some of the people that were probably in the spaces were listening to the broadcast last night. Amazing. Let me just get my bearings on that issue, you know, because this just happened like just minutes ago. But I mean, amazing. And just, you know, the censorship is just so profound in this country now. And he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything wrong. He didn't say anything wrong. Shit. All right. Let me unpause this here.
Fighting what they believe to be fighting on behalf of the Palestinians, but there is that line that's been blurred continuously when it comes to whether they're supporting Palestinians or the Al-Aqsa Flood movement, which was kicked off by Hamas. So when they gave a call for a global movement, particularly from Muslims and also from people of the free world, they said, they kicked off a global movement, and the socialists sanitized the language that they used when they were calling people to participate in these pro-Palestine demonstrations. And they distinguished, or they separated, they weeded out the Islamist language that was used by Hamas and the religious extremist language that was used by Hamas. And then they mobilized groups on campuses all over the world. And we've seen that all over the world, but it's particularly disturbing when it comes from the Ivy League establishments, because these are the knowledge producers and these are the ones that shape policy. So we've been seeing this for a long time, and yes, it does affect India, because the same group are theorising in these establishments that Hindus are colonisers, that they've magically colonised India, which is the most bizarre thing. But if you say a lie, you know, enough times, people believe it. And that's exactly what I think's happened.
But how do you think these terms are being loosely associated? How are fascists being, Hindus are being called fascists, Hindutvawadis are being called fascists, Jews are being called and branded oppressors. So who decides who these oppressed are, who the oppressors are? Or does history not matter? Do facts not matter here?
Well, obviously, it's whoever gets the money and the funding for their departments and the universities who can produce the material to write the theories. Because if we had funding to write theories and to go back and to critique all of this material, we need, you know, literally we need thousands of people on the ground.
The Federal Reserve Bank of New York just issued a digital dollar, effectively replacing paper money with nothing more than...
Oh, literally, we need thousands of people on the ground. We've got dozens of university departments signing their name onto, you know, what they call teachings that, you know, they say that there's a problem with safety on campus, and that it's a, you know, it's problematic to be calling for safety for Jews on campus and speaking out against anti-Semitism. And they say that anti-Semitism is being weaponized, and all of the Middle Eastern departments have signed up to that. So it is a problem. Yes, and it's the same people who are theorizing that Hindus have weaponized Hinduphobia. So that's where they really synchronize.
Because it's from this academia, Makaranji, that this entire dismantled global Hindutva emanated. The SB 403 stemmed from these kind of academic thinkers. The John Doe now stands revealed. We'll get Pandit Satish Sharmaji to speak about that too. But let me ask you, sir, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, where does it stop? Where does it? And should there be no reasonable restrictions?
You see, the first thing that I noticed yesterday when they played, you know, these hearings, the testimonies that the three top presidents gave, they all followed the same template. Everyone talked about context. Everybody said that they're not actionable if it's only speech. And they were constantly hedging without saying very clearly that calls for genocide, regardless of the context, are abhorrent and should be stopped. So the way I look at it is that this is a real opportunity to push back, because this time, you know, those who speak against the Jewish people in the US, who are a protected minority, and also the Jewish people are very powerful in the industry, in business, on Wall Street, and in the media. So the pushback is going to be very, very strong. As you yourself said, there's been a turnaround. And this is an opportunity for other groups like the Hindus to also step in and show how this wokeism has infected, you know, US campuses, the top campuses. But I look at this as a silver lining, because I think that America, in fact, just think about it. There is a congressional committee which can call a president of a university and hold them, you know, responsible for what is happening on their campuses. Do you think that can be done in India on my own campus? Was anybody held responsible for what happened in 2016? I myself was there and a witness, and I think Anand was there too. My point is that there are things in the American system that, you know, we can learn from, how they are capable of solving a problem and rectifying it. And the Hindu community, especially in the US, you know, has shown a remarkable unity of purpose and a strategic smartness in intervening at this time. So I think this is a time to realign and to learn, you know, from the pushback that the Jewish community has given. And I think there are signs of hope, because wokeism is a dead end. And I think the top campuses are beginning to see that, you know, things like microaggression or, you know, their entire agenda of political correctness is not really conducive to producing useful knowledge either about self or about society. So I think that I'm looking at this as an opportunity, you know, to really make a difference and change the discourse.
But does that stop there only, Pandit Satish Sharmaji? Is it only with these 3 or 4 academic institutions in the US? Or is this far more endemic across top academia across the world? And how much of it is actually now percolating back into institutions in Bharat? Because somewhere this entire aping the West and holding them to the highest standards, and a lot of them who are perhaps coached there are coming back here. And is it now being percolated back into the Bharatiya system too?
Jai Shri Ram, and thank you for raising this issue. I will just refer to the very first time when it was mooted that academic institutions from the West should be given free rein to establish themselves in Bharat. At that time, myself and many people who were concerned about this said, no, do not do this. There is due diligence that should be done firsthand. If it was a very large corporation coming in, bringing products, there would be due diligence done. Whereas in this instance, it seemed to be an open door, then come and bring your gifts. I'm actually in agreement with Professor Balanjabe when he said that there is a silver lining. What we are seeing is the underbelly of a subprime educational system being revealed. Please have no doubts about this. This is not an institutional ethos. which exists to bring out of an individual what their gifts are, to find what those gifts are, to equip them with the tools to live a fulfilled life, to equip them with what they need to contribute to the maximum to society. Isn't that what education is supposed to be? And yet there is no trace of that in the manner in which these institutions are run. So absolutely we shouldn't allow them in. I would say stop. Do not allow them to bring this particular brand of conditioning, brainwashing, radicalization into Bharat. There is one other thing I just wanted to pick on. You mentioned freedom of speech a few moments ago. You know, the universities say we value freedom of speech, but it's an accepted principle that in academia, freedom of speech exists within a container. And the purpose.
Too few books were about my people. Where's our representation?
What you reading excerpt?
Yo, Sharonda, girl, you be pregnant again?
Critics are calling American fiction. It's within a container. And the purpose of that container is to have freedom to explore the most contentious issues without animosity and without malice to any particular group. What we're actually witnessing on the campuses is not a container. It is an abuse of freedom of speech, and I would say that this crosses the line. An incitement to genocide, not being included within bullying policies. I would have thought that if this was not such an august group of presidents, one would have thought that these are amateurs in a sixth form students' union struggling with the concepts of what freedom of speech and protection of students is all about. I would say without a doubt that this is a good thing. In fact, I did a program earlier this morning, and as a result of it, a number of parents from Bharat reached out and said, we have got no intention now of sending our children to the United States or the United Kingdom for further education. Thank you so much for highlighting these points. And I think that is the most valuable thing that's emerged out of this whole issue. We do not want subprime education.
But we also, but this is something, but Panditji, I'm interrupting you because Dr. Anand Ranganathan raised another issue that it will be a few hundreds or perhaps a few thousand students who are going outside our shores to study, and you may even put that number into a few 100,000 students. But there are crores and crores of students who here in Bharat. What education are they getting? What is it that they are being taught? Are they being taught to think straight, or are they also being taught the very same stories and the very same kind of or line of thought or expression what is being witnessed in campuses abroad? Dr. Ranganathan.
Yeah, just to pick on that point, Anand, first of all, thank you so much for this arranging this wonderful panel. It's been a great discussion. But just to pick on that point before I make my own points, when you talk about what Indian kids, crores of them have been taught, the manifesto of Tipu Sultan in his own words and language says annihilation of the infidel or the kafir is a sacred duty of every Muslim. And we celebrate Tipu Jayanti in this country. We eulogize Tipu in our school textbook. So much for, saying that everything is hunky-dory in our education system. But I'd like to make 3 points, and I think they're fairly important because I speak here as a free speech absolutist. And frankly, today I feel very lucky to have, gone to the other Cambridge and not to these Harvard and MIT guys, because the level of juvenile argument and their understanding and analytical skills as to what constitutes or comes under the ambit of free speech is just shocking. A call for a genocide cannot be free speech, and I speak as a free speech absolutist. It's like giving a rape threat. I'm sorry. You're not allowed to do that because it promises to deliver immediate or maybe a little bit delayed harm to the victim. Thousands of them. It's like that Gustaki Rasool ki ek hi saza sar tan se juda. You cannot make a call for beheading under the ambit of free speech. So it is totally unacceptable. And it is something that these presidents should have known. And it's really shameful and embarrassing that they don't understand what is free speech. Number 2, I would have loved had the congresswoman who was questioning them made it completely watertight to make sure whether these are anti-Semites or they're just plain ignorant people. She should have asked them, is the call for a Muslim genocide also violating your code of conduct? Had they said, yes, it is, and the call for Jewish genocide is not, then they were anti-Semites. But had they said, yes, call for genocide of every community does not violate.
Discovered I got a flat tire and no one can help. It pays to be prepared. Keep this in your glove box. This thing is amazing. Why?
Of every community does not violate our code of conduct, then they are plain ignorant. They have no idea what free speech is, but they are not, at least they are not anti-Semites. So that is where it is. Thirdly, and this is also very important, what happens to the religious books that are the root cause for anti-Semitism? Did the Harvard president or the MIT president say that Jews are the worst of creatures, 98.6? Did he say that Jews should be destroyed? Jews are condemned to hell? No, he didn't. But we are completely silent about the people who believe in these verses, not only believe in them, who refuse to condemn them. So, you know, the world is looking at an elephant in the room and not looking at it. That's all I'll say on this matter.
So they know the elephant in the room, but they don't know that there is the elephant in the room. Sarah Gates, how would you want this to be reformed? Or how is it that, because some of these academic institutions are the gold standard. Parents, students aspire to go and study there. A lot of the big top Jewish billionaires, businessmen have all pulled back funding once they realized what is going on in these campuses. Sadly, and this is a statement made by the likes of Rajiv Malhotra and Dr. Vijaya Vishwanathan, some of the top business houses from our country are funding some of these academic institutions, especially humanities studies there. And they perhaps, we do not know whether they've done an audit of what's being taught or what's being proliferated there, but there has been no reaction. There was no reaction even when there were calls to dismantle Hindutva.
Well, I did see when I was looking for postdoctoral opportunities that Mahindra is funding a program in environmental humanities, which I found is, you know, it's my genre, it's what I do, environmental humanities, but I've never studied in Harvard. And I started to wonder why they're funding Harvard to run these programs. I'm studying environmental humanities through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita. Why can't I do that in India? Why can't I get funding, which is an attractive funding, to live and study at a postdoctoral level in India? So Mahindra could just, all of these funds could be pulled out, like we've seen with some of the Jewish philanthropists have just pulled their funds out. And so that then does have a repercussion for the university, and it gives them an incentive, not necessarily to toe any lines, but to recognise anti-Semitism. One of the presidents didn't know, which is a common knowledge thing, that anti-Semitism is the highest form of hate crime in America. So when she was asked whether or not, you know, she knew, she didn't know. So that's the first thing. The fact that she didn't know that, and she's at a congressional hearing, is a very serious issue. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion officers were found to be liking and engaging with posts that were pro-Palestinian. And a majority of these diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. So the so-called providers of equity and inclusion are themselves prejudiced against Jews and biased towards Palestinians. So what can be done about this? Well, they cited the values of Harvard, and that was the reason why they were able to fire certain professors. They've cited a code of conduct, policy, bullying, harassment, and intimidation. And then there's Title 6, I think they called it. So they have got, some legal recourse that they can go down, and that will happen due to pressure. But how can we get out of this? Well, I just think defund them. Frankly, I think defund.
American dentists are shocked with this new $49 ultrasonic device, and the problem starts right here in the bathroom. Do you see the problem?
Defund them. Frankly, I think defund them. Bring your money back into India and attract the brightest minds to India. You're a growing, incredibly intellectual civilization, and you have so much to offer the world. I would rather go there. And there's plenty of me out here. I'd much rather have a cultural experience there than have to study in America. I don't feel safe in America. They had a mass shooting in a university in Nevada. 3 people were killed by a professor, no less.
Yes.
So why would anybody want to go and study there? Why would anyone want to send their kids there? And then you get brainwashed. I don't want to be brainwashed. You know, I want freedom of thought, and that's what I get from Indian traditional knowledge. So it's an attractive, you know, prospect if these philanthropists can, you know, secure the future. And if we have to bring people like me over, I'm happy to teach there. I'd much prefer to teach in an Indian university than go and get a big job in America with lots of money. I don't want that. I just want the opportunity to teach truth. That's our job as scholars. So yes, that's one way out of it.
True. Well, fair point, Kate. But Pandit Satish Sharma, what happened with Rashmi Samant? What happened with Vivekananda and Agnihotri on campuses? How is that allowing freedom of speech? So if you are pro-Israel, pro-Hindutva, pro-Bharat, then we will not allow. If you're trying to call out Hindu Messiah, you're calling out absolute pan-Islam or pan-Islamism, then you are bigoted. But on the other hand, if you express a pro-Palestine or pro-Hamas kind of a line when you call and when you make these genocide calls, then it's freedom of speech. You're perfectly within your rights to do so. That doesn't kind of sit well, does it?
Yeah, I think we have to. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we have to accept these presidents' words as indicative of their larger understanding and worldview. We are being too generous in saying that they do not understand the nuance of the freedom of speech. That's not the issue. We have some very senior educationalists who have openly decided, contemptuously, if I may say, under oath in front of a hearing, to put forward a protection for people who have decided that it's okay to call for genocide. Now, we have always looked at these things up until this point as casual intellectual observers exploring nuance, but I really would like to ring an alarm bell here, because what's being revealed is a group of people who are happy to leverage and protect hatred against a very vulnerable, smaller minority within their communities. And it's this leveraging of hatred in such a casual manner which should really ring an alarm bell. It would only take one or two small conversational changes to redirect that hatred away from the Jewish community and direct it directly towards us. And I feel that the ground is being laid for that to happen in the very near future. A very serious conversation needs to be had with, as Sarahji mentioned, the Mahindus of the world.
My spaces ran out of juice.
They need to be asked, why are you funding organizations which are nurturing hatred? That's actually what they're doing. These are not academic institutions anymore. And unless they discard and punish these presidents, I don't think we should believe them. We should not take them at face value.
Right. Makranji.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there is an insidious and unscrupulous alliance between people who espouse the cult of violence, whether these are radical Islamists or radical Marxists.
It aggravates me that YouTube took down the Peter Duke video I did with him last night. You know, here's the thing, you know, there's a lot of censorship that's going on, and we have to be careful. Like, I opened up the spaces to take questions, assuming the question would be related to the book. But of course, we didn't have that. And someone, you know, started talking about the V, right? And all the negative externalities of the V, right? And we were trying to answer his question. Peter, you know, answered it from his perspective, and I answered it in mine. And that was the, quote, medical misinformation that gave the strike. See, people need to realize that just because we open up the channels for you to ask questions, you need to be discerning on how you answer, how you ask the question. Because how you ask the question can determine if that video is going to be taken down on YouTube or not. So you need to be a little bit more understanding. And this is the reason why people don't open up their channels to questions, because there's a public out there that just doesn't understand on the censorship that we're going through. They just don't get it, and they don't care because it's no skin on their back. So, now I got to deal with another strike on one of my YouTube channels because someone was not discerning in how they were asking the question. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the silver gel. This is a 35 ppm silver gel that will neutralize pathogens. You put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your ears. You can use this also as a skincare product. This has a dispenser, a quick pump dispenser, so you can put it in your bag. It's a great product. And again, it neutralizes pathogens. Please go to the store and also get your magnesium and zinc. It boosts up your immune system. Take a double dose of it if you're sick. I have a multivitamin that you should add to your anti-aging protocol. Multivitamins are really important because they are cofactors for enzymatic activity. I have lignans, which is an immune booster powder. You mix it with water, or you can mix it with hummus or a smoothie, or mix it with your food. I usually mix it with hummus. This will boost up your immune system and it'll help with your hormonal health. It's for males and females. I've partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've created these very high quality deodorant bars that are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, extremely high quality essential oils, where this bar, not only do you use it as a deodorant every day, but it will help to detoxify your body. So this bar will actually improve your health. So just what you need to do is go to the store. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, tea tree, lavender. Get a couple of these bars and you'll notice a major difference. I try to put products on the store that are multifunctional. They're multi-purpose to help to justify the cost. They're very high quality, so please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I also have a 24 ppm gel in a tube form. This is made from a different laboratory, but it's a structural nanosilver. It also neutralizes pathogens, and you apply it the exact same way as the other product. I have structural nanosilver soaps. I have 5 different versions of this, different varieties. This one's lemongrass and high quality structural nanosilver soaps. I also have structural nanosilver lozenges and drops. I have them in the 20 count for the lozenges for sweet menthol and green apple. All right. And for the 100 count, I have smaller drops, right? They're in the 100 count in blueberry and in honey lemon. So please get a couple bags of these. We're in the cold season, so that will help you, neutralize pathogens, soothe that throat. Let's go back to the news here.
They have or radical other, woke or, political correctness advocates, and they have infiltrated and taken over and contaminated the space of human sciences. Human sciences, that is meant liberal arts, on the one hand, the humanities, and social sciences, or social studies. Right. So the entire spectrum of human searching and quest for truth has been contaminated by these unscrupulous elements, and they have to be called out. We have to push back, and there have to be new alliances, and all these presidents and other people who are underwriting and cloaking and masking, these unscrupulous cult of violence devotees must be called out and held responsible. And I think that this process is starting in the United States, and you may call it conservative backlash, you may call it the Republican people trying to get in or whatever. Right. But there is a churn, and this will not be tolerated any longer. That's why I said there's a silver lining, and what is happening, and the echoes of it in India and universities like Ashoka and GETTR. Mahindras, by the way, they run their own university, which is not so bad. So I'm saying that this is not acceptable. It has to be called up. There has to be a pushback, and this has to be systematic. And new alliances have to be formed, and we need to produce better research and better scholarship. not just ideology.
Well, at least now we're talking about it, and it's come to our cognizance. Perhaps it's right out there for us to look at it, and that perhaps is the biggest silver lining. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you and such an august panel here on the right stand. Thank you very much. Namaste and Jai Hind to everybody. We're going to wind up on that note. Brass tacks after a very, very short break. Stay with us.
I'm just so aggravated with YouTube. It really pisses me off.
Congress getting tough on the rise in anti-Semitism?
It really pisses me off. This one's The Hill. We haven't played The Hill, so let's take a look at this.
Oh my gosh.
Campus madness, fireworks on Capitol Hill as presidents from Harvard, MIT, and the University of Pennsylvania were grilled by lawmakers over anti-Semitism on college campuses. Elise Stefanik posed the same question to the presidents, asking each, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your university's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying or harassment? Watch their response.
MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules?
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking, specifically calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill.
Meanwhile, students of the various represented schools joined congressional Republicans in a press conference to attest to some of the things they say their classmates and professors have said to them.
Swiftly denounced the incident, and yet our president cannot. Because the glorious October 7th, and you're a dirty little Jew, you deserve to die, are words said not by Hamas, but by my classmates and professors. And because despite all of this, I am adamant and hopeful that we will not accept, least of all embrace, this horrific new normal on college campuses today.
But while the focus of yesterday's hearing was on anti-Semitic incidents on campuses, friend of the show, Glenn Greenwald, highlighted that there have been a number of anti-Semitic comments that have gotten a lot less attention on various protests for Israel. For example, here in this tweet, he says, should university administrators allow speech of this kind on campus, or should they ban all such views and punish any students or student groups expressing them? All right, what do you make of this?
So I watched some of the hearing. There was a lot of, I saw anger toward the university president's answers, including from the members of Congress grilling them. So I actually don't have any problem with what they said, because they're right. There are and should be broad free speech protections given to the students and to the faculty, and you can make under a now. I mean, the campuses don't have to exactly follow the First Amendment. It's a little bit complicated. If it's a public university, it does. If it's a private university, maybe it does because it gets funding. In any respect, they promised to follow free speech principles, so they've said they're committed to doing it, so they should be held responsible for that commitment, given that they take money from the students to attend. So you can say really hateful, anti-Semitic, even genocidal things, and if it's aimed at a frankly a broad enough group, it will not be considered specific enough to qualify as harassment or a threat. That's just true of statements in general. I mean, I could say I'd like to kill or I wish we're dead. You know, you could substitute any group of people, and that would be a protected statement. If I start saying specifically a specific person, Brianna Joy Gray, and here's how I'll do it and at what time, then it's not protected speech anymore. So they're outlining something that exists in law, and in their own policies state, discriminatory harassment is unwelcome and offensive conduct that is based on an individual or group's protected status. Discriminatory harassment may be considered to violate the policy when it's severe or pervasive and objectively offensive, creates a work, educational, or living environment that a reasonable person would consider intimidating, hostile, or abusive, or denies them equal participation in the workplace or the educational institution. So there are arguments there that it's context specific, and if it's just words said, so just chanting, it's probably protected. If you wrote a statement on someone's blackboard on their dorm room, that would probably be targeted harassment, and it is context specific. Is accurate. I'm sorry that's so annoyed, at least Stephanie, but it's accurate. Now, but I will say, I think part of the frustration that is justified is that, I mean, I've covered campus free speech issues, incidents for like 15 years now. And I have seen over and over again investigations and suspensions against students and against professors on the mere whim that someone was offended, the mere suggestion of the universities themselves create bias response systems where if someone uses the wrong pronoun for you, I've covered tons of cases.
I'm just asking for an example of someone who's been suspended or expelled because they used the wrong pronouns, or said something anti-Black or anti-Asian or whatever, or anti-gay or whatever.
There was a student who on his task, you're supposed to fill in the name of your professor, and wrote the wrong pronoun for the professor, and was given an F assignment for doing that, and had to appeal it and said, well, I don't have.
Okay, but I just want to be really specific.
Well, there's an example.
Right, but I asked if there's an example. They're talking about whether or not these people should be, you mentioned specifically expulsion, for example. So
the State University of New York gave guidance to professors that they would suffer consequences if they continue to use gendered salutations in emails to students.
But there haven't been. Can you just, I'm sorry. But there haven't been. Can you just, I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on, I think we made a lot of really good points there.
Yeah.
You did say that there were tons of examples of people who have been suffering these enormous consequences.
There was a student at the university put a sports sign that was, I mean, I can go back to my archives.
I don't mean to comment, but
so many.
Here's why I'm bringing it up. Because I haven't been in college for a very long time, but my experience is that there was regular open debates about whether Black people were intellectually inferior, genetically inferior to white people. A law student that I went to college with named Stephanie Grace famously had an email that she had written to a friend of hers leaked. There were no Black people involved in that link. Her friend was white, she's white. But she had said something to her friend about how she was debating Black people's genetic intellectual IQ merits, and that she would like to believe that she adopted a little Black kid, that they would be as smart as her little white peers, but she had her doubts and it didn't seem to be panning out. You should read her words for herself. But that sparked a whole debate. There were innumerable debates about the legitimacy of Black kids on campus through my entire educational experience, and never once were any of those people censored, held accountable, anything like that. And nor do I think that they should be. It was a horrible experience. When that Penn student was standing there, he talked about how he wished he could focus on his exams and get on with his life, but he had to engage with that. I resonate with that feeling because I remember in the middle of the exam period being tasked with responding to national media requests over the Stephanie Grace story as a part of the Black Law Student Association. So that resonates with me. But the point that I think is important here is that I think what the university presidents were getting hung up on was the idea that anybody was actually making those genocidal statements to begin with.
So I think that some of them the first president said, well, nobody's making those statements.
I'm going to jump to commercial here. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ashwagandha root that I have. This helps to control your blood glucose levels and reduce that inflammatory response at the cardiovascular level. Please get my probiotic. I have this one in a powdered form. I also have it in a capsule form. I take this every day. I mix it with my hummus. What it does is it properly populates your gut with the right level of bacteria, right? And have a proper gut biome that helps with metabolism, that helps with the communication between your gut and your liver, and it'll also help with the communication between your gut and your brain. So a good gut biome, a good healthy gut biome is really important, and it also will help with stools. So I also have D3. D3 is really important for calcium absorption and apoptosis, to get rid of cells that need to go through apoptosis. D3 is an important gene expression cofactor. You need D3, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get D3. I have turmeric. Turmeric is a great product to bring down inflammation and help that response, that cytokine response, to bring that down. In addition, it is an antioxidant, and it's part of the anti-aging protocol. Liquids and gels, structural nanosilver is the first pillar to neutralize pathogens. Another pillar is a strong antioxidant like C60, and the third pillar is ashwagandha and turmeric to bring down that inflammatory response. And then you add stuff to that, but that's the core. So please go to my store and get the turmeric. I'm going to go back to the video here.
But here's what our policies are. Fair enough. The next two should have just said that, but instead they basically, what seemed to be happening was they were assuming that by genocidal statements, I think that Jews shouldn't exist or whatever the genocidal statement was, that Stefanik was alluding to statements like, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, which obviously there's a debate about whether or not that means exterminating all Jews, or whether that means from the river to the sea, Palestinians and Jewish people, Arabs and Jews, should have equal rights under the law, which does not currently exist in Israel. And so I think that they were saying, they were wanting to resist validating the idea that those genocidal statements were being made in the first place. And in the same way that there's that famous example of, if you're asked, why are you beating your wife? Even if you've never beat your wife, that being out there creates a kind of reality that people don't necessarily want to validate. You know what I mean?
Yes. There have been a number of, I want to make clear that I do have examples, a number of professors, we've talked about some of them on the show, using the N-word in English literature discussions or in language discussions. There was one professor who used a word, I can't in what language, that just sounds like, it was Chinese. It sounds like that word. It isn't, and he was punished by the institution. It does. Fire right now has 1,000 open cases.
So let's dig into this. What is the alleged statement from? This is very important. What is the alleged statement from a student or a faculty member, similar to the very specific example you just gave? Whatever you feel about it, rightly or wrong, we have an example of a statement that was made. Has there been, in any of the reporting that you've looked at, or in the testimony that we just saw that young man from Penn give, a specific statement that is attributed to a specific person, maybe a professor, that should be investigated? Because what I noticed, the reason that I wanted to pick that part of the clip was that individual made the following allegation, the following very serious and very specific allegation. He said, so I'm just pulling it up on my Twitter wants to be really slow. He specifically said that both his professors and fellow students have said, quote, "You're a dirty little Jew, you deserve to die." Now, I strongly agree that if a professor or a student, but especially a professor, was heard saying, "You're a dirty little Jew, you deserve to die," that absolutely there would be professional consequences, and there should be professional consequences. Now, before we read the student guidelines, the student guidelines and the professor guidelines are two very different things. Professors should absolutely not be teaching at an institution where they are saying something as vile as that. But why is it that there's a congressional hearing where this young man is going to get up and be able to make that kind of an accusation without saying who the professor was? Do you remember what professor said something like that? I'm asking why it is that when we have video that we aren't able to play because we don't have permission to it, but the video that was included in the Glenn Greenwald tweet features pro-Israel protesters saying, kill all Palestinians, all of them, not one left from the river to the sea. Palestine will be deceased. We got to wipe them off the face, off the effing map, and I'm talking about flattening them like a parking lot. That's evidence. You can do what you want with that evidence. You can say someone should be sanctioned. Specific statements called on camera that people have said that you can feel one way or the other about. But as I've been reading about the allegations of what's going on in Penn, calling for an intifada. Intifada means resistance. It means rebellion. So absolutely that should be protected speech. I don't understand why that's being characterized as hate speech. Yes, people who are in an occupied territory are going to call for their own liberation and for revolution. The American Revolution isn't hate speech. Apartheid revolution isn't hate speech. The Haitian Revolution isn't hate speech. This isn't hate speech. So what are the specific examples that are being put forward?
Hate speech is a made-up category. I'm not going to refer to any hate speech.
But in violation of school policy.
Well, I don't think any of this is a violation of school policy. I don't care. The statement is
you're a dirty little Jew. We're definitely in violation of somebody's.
Because that's targeted at a specific person. I mean, this is different. A specific. If I call you that,
no,
then that's what that's what the university professors are saying.
Right, but that's not what that kid was saying. That kid wasn't saying someone's pointed at me and called me that.
He said my classmates and professors have said things like that, and he also said that, and that they said glory to what happened on October 7th, which is totally, as I've said multiple times, in keeping with the sentiment of pro-Palestinian activists on college campuses.
It's keeping with the sentiment of people.
Today we witnessed a historic win for the Palestinian resistance, referring to the events of October 7th.
Let me finish, Robbie. A lot of people made statements like that. Wait, I'm telling you, I'm validating what you're saying.
Yes.
Give me the space to agree with you, Jesus. On October 7th, October 8th, people were saying things like that. Norm Finkelstein, who has gotten a lot of viral attention right now because of how compelling he is, has talked about how he also, when the facts were not out and it seemed like this was a resistance movement and nobody knew how many civilians had been killed, made statements like that, which Norm Finkelstein, I can't speak for every student on campus, but Norm Finkelstein, who again is the son of Holocaust survivors, revised when he realized the gravity of not the legitimate kind of military revolutionary act, but the actual attack on civilians that is in no way validated under international law and cannot be characterized as a revolutionary act.
Well, I would have deleted this statement from my website then if it was just a misunderstanding.
But the point of the matter is
mine had been sufficiently changed. I don't think they've changed their mind about it.
Okay, this is an important point. We now have, what has happened actually is that students making anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab comments have not gotten the same kind of treatment. We had almost every congresswoman out in front of Congress doing a vigil for the lost Israeli lives. We had the 5 or 6 members of the squad at a vigil for the now 15,000 Palestinians have been killed using American bombs in Gaza. You have 3 Palestinian students literally shot, one paralyzed permanently, wait a minute, below the waist as a consequence of anti-Muslim hate, anti-Arab hate, anti-Palestinian hate, and had a 6-year-old stabbed to death as a consequence of it. But what Congress is doing is allowing a student to come forward and put forward unsubstantiated, if he can substantiate it, God, please, I hope he does, because no professor should be allowed to make those kind of statements in my view. But making unsubstantiated claims at the same time that Congress is passing legislation that says anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. So in a world where the United States Congress, we know they believe that being critical of Israel is the same thing as being anti-Semitic, then how can you credit someone who's saying abstractly that people are making anti-Semitic statements when we know that to so many of these people, anti-Semitism means saying anything critical of Israel?
I know that, and there's some, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I'm done with this segment. Fine, whatever. Okay. More rising after this.
That might be it. Yeah. Let's play
Port Miami is the world's largest cruise port, and currently we're the 10th largest container port in the United States.
The tough problem that a lot of the universities have is that there's also a federal statute known as Title VI that prohibits discrimination on a number of bases, including religion, from programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. So they may have statutory duties that are separate and apart from First Amendment responsibilities. Also, we should note that the three schools who spoke at Congress yesterday, Penn, Harvard, and MIT, are all private universities, and the First Amendment doesn't apply.
That's where I want to get to with you here, because I appreciate the point that you're making, Professor, and I apologize for interrupting. You could probably kick me out of your class for that. But look, these are presidents of private universities talking about their code of conduct, right? Their code of ethics here in a congressional hearing. Why seek nuance in that case? Why not give them a yes or no? This is what people think is wrong with these universities.
Well, because the terms that were being bandied about don't have definitions that everybody understands the same way. I've had debates with people as to what genocide means, and there are a lot of people who attach definitions different than the UN definition of genocide. We heard Representative Stefanik or others use the term hate speech, but what does that mean? If I say I don't like you and you don't belong in my neighborhood, is that hate speech? Now, universities have the right to create codes of conduct, but they are also academic institutions that traditionally believe in debate, exploration of ideas. And the fear that I have is that if you prohibit certain speech and certain ideas, you don't stop those ideas. You don't stop that speech. You drive it underground where you have much less control over it than when it's out in the open. I mean, Justice Holmes on the Supreme Court taught us that the way to fight bad speech is to counter it with good speech.
So, Professor, if I'm understanding you correctly, when you're actually looking at the legal matters here, the difficulty in assigning specific definitions to a lot of this language, you actually think that these college presidents are approaching this in the right way, at least from a legal standpoint. You don't see much wrong here.
Well, I'm not sure how. I'm not very familiar with what's happening on each of the three campuses. So I don't believe that I can comment on whether they are approaching what's happening on their campuses correctly. If there are actual threats against individuals, or if people are being intimidated, then the universities may have an affirmative duty to take corrective action.
Well, Professor, I don't know what's going to come of that hearing yesterday, but it seems to me that lawmakers can do whatever they want, and it's really money that we're talking about here in donations. Those folks like Bill Ackman, who we mentioned, and Mitt Romney, who are protesting now, giving $1 instead of thousands or $1 million to these schools might, in fact, affect change. You might not want to answer this, but do you think all three of these presidents will still have their jobs a year from now?
Nope. I don't. It's not a question of whether I want to answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I do believe that those who withhold donations because they're not happy with what's happening are exercising their First Amendment rights to express their displeasure with the way the university presidents have handled the situation. And that might be a productive means of effecting change. One thing that I am concerned about when I hear calls for expelling students or from suspending students for exercising an unpopular opinion or view is that it doesn't really solve anything. What I believe the more appropriate way to respond would be for the universities to create teaching moments. And if someone has violated the code of conduct through speech or through participation in a demonstration where no one is really threatened, or where there is no incitement to imminent lawless action, it might be more productive to have a teaching moment with that student, to have the student study actual history, to write a paper on the issue of what was to be done by the world with the Jews after the Holocaust who had no place to go without the threat of being killed apart from their traditional historic home.
Port Miami is the world's largest cruise port, and currently we're the 10th largest container port in the United States. But
okay, so those are the videos dealing with the Harvard president speaking out on, you know, their issues with freedom of speech on campus, and you know, the hate that's starting to grow within the ultra liberal community, and some of the details. You know, I don't think that she's going to have her job in 36 months. I think that this is going to be a growing issue, and I think that she is going to be forced to resign. I could be wrong, but I think in 36 months this is going to get to a point where what's going to happen is that, first of all, it's at the end of the year, so they're doing their drive for donations. That's going to be low. She's going to justify it with, well, this is just a one-off, and then it'll all calm down. I don't think it'll calm down. I think that the problem that we're having in the Middle East is longer lasting and in a biblical origin compared to other episodes. I think this is a little bit more severe, right? And longer lasting. So when they go into 2024 and they start to see that their donations are lower, then she's going to be put on warning. And then when you get into 2025 and the donations are low, she's going to be forced to resign. I think that's the way it's going to play out. I personally think she's a poor leader and needs to be pushed out. With that said, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the strong antioxidant that I offer for 2 ounce, 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce, either in coconut oil or in avocado oil. I have it. This C60 molecule will soak up free radicals, reactive oxygen species, right? And by doing that, it reduces the cellular stress and improves the mitochondrial health, so you have more ATP. To slow down aging, you need to take strong antioxidants. To boost up your immune system, you need to take strong antioxidants because it'll allow you to have the energy that you need. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60 that I offer. It's a great product, and it's part of my anti-aging protocol. Another item that's part of my anti-aging protocol is taking liquid structural nanosilver. I have it in this silver solution, which is a 30 ppm. I also have Max 35, which is a 35 ppm, and I have Max 14, which is a 14 ppm. You take a teaspoon of this a day, of this, or the Max 35 or the 14. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day, all right? And this will help to neutralize the pathogens. So how you want to take it is you take the teaspoon and, you know, you put that amount in your mouth, right? And you swish it. You swish that liquid in your mouth for about 30 seconds and gargle, and then swallow it. And that will help to clear that upper oral cavity, back in the throat, and down your esophagus. Do this daily, all right? I take structural nanosilver, a teaspoon of it a day. That's part of the first pillar of the anti-aging protocol. I also take Clarity Factor every day. This helps to reduce brain fog. So I take this twice a day. I take it in the morning and the mid-afternoon, but some people just take it once a day. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get Clarity Factor. It'll reduce the brain fog, and what will happen is that by taking this on a regular basis, taking it every day, you're going to get those dendrites to be healthier. Those connections, those neurological connections, those neuron connections are going to be better, and you're going to have those neurons firing more, especially when you're taking it with the C60. Because the C60 is going to give you the ATP that you need, because it's bringing down those free radicals and keeping those mitochondria healthy. And you need a lot of mitochondria for your neurons to fire those neurotransmitters. So this will keep your brain healthy. Right? It's part of the anti-aging protocol. Another strong antioxidant is resveratrol. It is synergistic with C60. C60 is stronger antioxidant than resveratrol. This will help also to get rid of senescent cells. So it's a compound that's been known to have to increase longevity, and it's an anti-aging compound. So please go to the store, get your resveratrol from the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description. I also have vitamin C. So, take vitamin C every day. It helps to boost your immune system. It also helps with skin health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get your vitamin C. Thank you for going through this series of videos to deal with a serious problem in our society. It's not just anti-Semitism. It will be anti-Christian. And the root cause of all this is a runaway woke, ultra-liberal student body and professorships around the country. It's a major problem. And it's not just the erosion of religion. It's the erosion of the family unit. It's the erosion of capitalism. It's erosion of constitutional freedoms. I am very negative towards people that are ultra liberal. I think that their agenda, their policies have weakened America. Thank you for listening. Please support my work. I just had another strike. I just had a strike that took place on one of my YouTube channels that was premiering the recording I did with Peter Duke. All right. I like I said, I'm censored, and it wasn't that much in that video that they could get to pull it down. It was actually taking an audience question from Spaces. Someone that was listening in the audience. I took a question, and they were, so focused on the V and not focused on actually what Peter was saying about the book, which is about the illusion of democracy. All right. So please be careful when I do open it up to the public for questions, and be a little bit more mindful, and also be mindful on what you post in the chat, because that's monitored too. So just be careful, right? You wouldn't get my information if I lose my channels. All right. So please subscribe to all 6 channels, all 3 YouTube channels, the Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Links are in the description. And to help me reach a larger audience, I need you to share the links and get people to subscribe. My information is cutting edge. Cutting edge. All right. No one is more accurate on the current crisis that we're going through, the last crisis that we went through, and the emerging crisis that is happening in the post-COVID era. Nobody. So, it behooves you to actually help me survive, on YouTube. So please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels and have your friends, family, and social network subscribe. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and purchase the products that I offer. And please donate to help support my news coverage. You can donate through Stripe or PayPal on the homepage of the website. You can also donate through Buy Me a Coffee, or be a paid subscriber to my Patreon channel. That will help to make sure that all my content is free for everybody. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.